Hey there, Jen here. I'm gonna pull something up, but I'm just gonna do kind of a quick intro into this before I start. There's a reason that I'm starting where I am, but it is not where this video will end. There are two different topics. I think that they go together. You might not see it right away, and even I don't quite see it, but the Spirit has led me to these two topics at the same time, so I know there's a reason for it. So give me 1 second here. Which one do I want to go to first? There. Okay. Go. All right. So you're looking at a thread from 4 years ago from Reddit about the Mandela effect. Yes, we're going to touch on that topic today. It's something I don't talk about often. Why? Well, if you're new here, I don't talk about it often because it's a very combustible topic. People seem to take their personal opinions. I don't. They seem to take their personal opinions very seriously, right? There's no room for anyone else's perspective. When the Mandela effect first began, it was everybody thought Mandela was dead. He died in jail, and then suddenly he was back alive. To me, that is the true definition of the Mandela effect: is people who were deceased coming back to life. My problem with a lot of it is that I know a lot about a lot. It's just happened to be my work history, and my mother owned video stores. I know that every movie is made multiple times with multiple scenes and multiple different endings, when it's an actual movie and not just some type of voyeuristic snuff film in some type of way. What does that have to do with today's video? Okay, so I'm going to start with a short story. I was walking Sam today, right? And this shows, again, this is to highlight people's cold hearts. So I'm walking Sam, and I just had a feeling. There's a lot of other people that walk dogs. I try to walk him early in the day because I know how people feel about a pit bull when they see a pit bull. They have preconceived notions. Sam still has a problem with jumping and getting excited when he sees other dogs, although it's not all other dogs. It's only certain other dogs. Um, and only certain other people will he even bark at. Very few times does he misbehave like that. But we get to the trail part, and this girl's walking with her little husky, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's go into the weeds because she's not even slowing down or trying to even make room on the trail for me and Sam, which is the courteous thing to do, right? So she doesn't even make room for me. Where am I going with this? Last year, they were trying to greatly encourage me to go to the dog park. Why won't I do something like that? I'm closing the window, I apologize. Well, other TIs might be able to relate to this. I don't do things that are suggested by other people that have to be planned out because it's too easy to set you up today. And I know that the one protection I have and the one friend that I have is Samson, and they know this too. This is why when I come across new information, I'm not always very cooperative in handing it out. Why? Because it's my insurance, see, to make sure that those I love are still kept safe to a point. If you take Sam from me, this needs to be made very clear. Any little cooperation I've given you up until this point, as far as with information or just living here and allowing myself to be extorted when I know you don't need the funds, and all the things I know about you all personally, if you take away my one friend, there'll be nothing left for you to bargain with. And you need to understand that all of us TIs and stuff, we're not special. There is nothing better than us there is with you. The only difference is that we've decided to change our behavior. We've decided to repent. We've decided to not harm people and not hurt people and not hurt our families. Why is it that that woman could not have moved like any courteous runner, walker, biker and shared the lane? Well, because it was intentional. That's why. Because the other day I said, I have nothing left to lose. You've taken everything from me. Why are you still messing with me? And he said, oh, okay. Is that what you think? So tell me, if this man isn't behind most of the stuff happening to me, why does he say cryptic things like that? Sorry, Sammy is drinking after his peanut butter. You have to understand that this is emblematic for what we are dealing with in society right now. We have a society full of people who look good on paper, who have the right job, have the right money, have the right house, have the right car, have the right financing decisions that they've made in their portfolio. But behind closed doors, they are sadistic. They are narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopathic individuals. That is what we are dealing with. So sometimes I don't disclose everything that I've learned because it's not a good idea to let your enemy know your strategy. So I'm not sure if I'm going to tell you exactly what I think I found. I'm going to give you maybe a little bit of information, but we're going to start here today. And then, because what we're trying to do is determine what time are we in our timeline, and why has this generation gone so far off the rails into a bizarro world? And I had to take it back to the Mandela effect. I had to take it back to a couple of things that most of us have in common. Most of us have in common the Mandela effect, but not just that. We also have in common near death experiences. And I wanted to see, I'm getting better at the Reddit searches than I used to be. And so this is a new conversation. We touch on the Mandela effect probably once every few months. And we also touch on NDEs. Why? Because as I've said before, if we look where these common threads lie, if we start looking at these commonalities, then we can know that usually if something goes across a paradigm, political, entertainment, spiritual, then that is the truth. And one thing most of us have in common, that feel like we're Mandela affected or feel like we're in the wrong timeline or and again, I don't look at the Mandela effect the same way as other people, but I do not, I'm not going to deny that there are some differences in our world and the things that are going on. Right away, though, we have to throw away brand changes and anything that can be changed digitally. This is why, even though in profiling and police work, they will tell you that witnesses are notoriously unreliable. Well, because they say that, that's actually where I take this. It's too easy for someone to rewrite history and say Mandela is actually still alive. That is too easy for them to do. They can say anything if they can change it digitally, right? And you can change almost anything digitally. They tell you it's more secure, but the reason they want to go to digital is because everything is shared there. A cloud means you're sharing all of that information. Clouds are notoriously unsecure, but they don't want you to know that. Okay, so the two things we all have in common, some of us think this is Satan's short season, some of us think it's tribulation, some of us think it's purgatory. And I have run the gamut of all of these and I've tried to test every theory. So every now and again, I take it back to these two things to see if I find any new information. And voila, I found a very old thread from 4 years ago. But I know it doesn't feel like it, but that's the beginning of CV and our lockdowns. And that's when most people recognized that life was different because you had to, right? Because you finally were told to slow down. So you were able to slow down. And so you finally had the time to then notice the people around you, the changes in the people around you. Now, my dad passed away in 2012, uh, very near where the Mayan calendar was supposed to end. My dad passed away. I have a lot of very weird parallels with my life and Christ's life. It's very strange. There's a reason he was my hero before he was my savior. He was my hero. He was like my idol or whatever you want to call him. Um, but moving on, let's check this out. How many of you have had a near-death experience or something similar? Now, the group that this is in is the Mandela Effect Reddit group, okay? So they're always talking about Mandela Effect, and like me, they're trying to find out what's common. Now, I thought that I'd commented on a few threads like this, and I find it ironic. Some threads are 10 years old, and the comment sections are still open. This one, however, is closed, but we can still learn from it. So it says, how many of you have had a near death experience or something similar? Someone recently posted, and I remember this, 4 years old. Someone recently posted their thoughts involving a near death event that they did, in fact, die during said event and are now in a different dimension or place, resulting in them experiencing the Mandela effect. I commented, wondering how many people here have had a similar experience, but I think it needs its own post. I had a full on NDE in 2011. The following few days, reality appeared very different, almost in slow motion, as if I could see the building blocks that made up everything around me. That sounds like a DMT experience, how they say they see the grid and all that. I was very calm and at peace. Somehow, after those few days, all of that just went away. However, since then, my life changed dramatically, both physically and spiritually. I've often wondered if I am in some sort of vanilla sky scenario. What if this is some sort of purgatory? Or there are many levels of purgatory, and that explains the different combination and versions of MEs people experience. So, how many here have had some sort of experience that could be theorized as quote unquote death? When I say death is an illusion or a simulation, that's kind of what I mean, quote unquote death, right? Um, it is an illusion. And that's what most people have to understand is that Satan is the father of lies and he is the master of illusion. What does that mean? That means most of the things that you see here are houses of cards. They're not real. You might see a bunch of men in uniform, but really they're just costumes and it's Fortnite. They have no real authority over you, and this is this is the main thing that I want to get across as a citizen. These people have no authority over us. Our MK Ultra is the little box and screen that we look at to consume our news. That is how they re-educate and reprogram you, like the TikTok videos that are being spread around on content farms. Why do you think this is YouTube, but they're showing you all those TikToks? So that even the people who don't have TikTok get to see TikTok because there's something on there they want you to believe, or some things. So we're going to see how people answered this, but what do you guys think? Now, my dad passed in 2012. Sorry, I have like a hang now. It's bugging me. I always get them and it's ridiculous. My dad passed in 2012, right near the Mayan calendar date, and he also left me a Mayan and or Aztec chess set. It's pretty cool. My dad was that way though. In when was it? Probably around after my dad died, I had this experience with DMT. I was a little old for it, but people die and people grieve, and sometimes you go back to old things. Sometimes you are a dog and you go back to your vomit until you realize what that means truly to your soul. I mean, you got to do all that work over again, right? Just to get back to the same place where you're at now. So we had done this thing, me and this girl, and we were driving home, and it was taking like a really long time. And long story short, she kept saying, "Oh my gosh, we drove through a portal. Oh my gosh, we drove through a portal. Oh my gosh, we drove through a portal." I've said before that I believe my spouse is behind a lot of this. And I maintain that because, again, I don't know if he's my spouse or not. And we'll continue with that because I'm not the only one who feels that way. And you might say, well, it's mental illness or, well, this, well, that, it's trauma, blah, blah, blah. The trauma happened after I noticed all these changes and they did not want me to see these things. So that was one experience for me, was the we're going through a portal thing. But there was another one. As far as the purgatory thing goes, I bounce back and forth all day long, every day with purgatory. The thing is, if people are noticing glitches and breakdowns, it's very important to understand that purgatory, the need for purgatory, would go away, would be omitted once nobody's watching. So I'm going to take my time. These two topics do go together, but again, you have to be an adult with a mature spirituality and spiritual or a mature personality to be able to maintain an attention span over 3 minutes today, and I understand that, I do. So the need for purgatory ends if we are at the end days. And this is one of the reason this topic is before the tribulation topic. Another reason is because, again, Mandela effect. So the original definition of that was when somebody came back to life from dead. Now, granted, we did not see Mandela. We do not know him personally. It could just be something they're doing on the screen. It could just be gaslighting and a giant psyop that they want people to believe it's the end of the world. Why would they do that? Well, because in a way, you get a bunch of people to consent to their own demise. Think about it. If we agree that this is the end days, well, then a lot of people are going to agree just to be martyred because that's what the book says. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with martyrs. I'm not saying that the book isn't true. I'm just saying that they will weaponize anything they can here, including and up to your spirituality, your religion, your faith. So this person thinks it could be a few things, all right? So we got a few people. We have this one here, Camel Holocaust. Now, again, this thread is closed. You can't comment on it or anything. And this guy says, oh, jeez, hold on. Sorry. Where did it go? I want to make sure they're all open. There we are. I'm pretty sure I died of alcohol poisoning a few years ago. I was going through a dark time and really overdoing it. I passed out in front of the toilet, practically naked, sweaty, vomiting, and could not stand up. The next thing I knew, I was awake in my bed and it was morning. I was wearing different clean clothes and was not sweaty or gross at all. I felt perfectly fine, no hangover, headache, or even thirst. I was living alone at the time and I was single, so there was nobody that would have come in and taken care of me. I was obviously really confused, but mostly just happy to avoid the hangover. Since then, things have seemed off, like a dream or almost like a TV show I happen to be living in. It all feels fake and distant to me. Now, it is common for people who have near death experiences, they say, to experience some type of disassociativeness. But how many people? Because this isn't the only thread like this that I found, nor is it the only experience like this. So let's continue. And again, we will get to the tribulation information and possibly to what I discovered. I haven't decided if I'm going to talk about that yet or not because it's a big deal to me, but it might not be a big deal to anyone else. Okay, so this person is going on about something else, but now this person it's putting it all to psychology about repressed memories, this, that, and the other. And again, you know how I feel about psychology. It fascinates me, human behavior, but I know that the institution itself is a lot of witchcraft. It's a lot of, and by that I mean traditional, it's a lot of manipulation of vulnerable individuals who go there for help. And they are a big problem when you consider the fake alien abductions. And I'm not saying the abductions don't take place and aren't real. I'm saying it's not aliens doing it as much as you want it to be. And why would you want that? You got to think about your own psychology there. For people who want alien abductions to be real, do you understand what that means? Do you understand that's beings entering your home without your consent and they're not benevolent or they wouldn't be entering your home doing your most vulnerable state? People don't think though. That's not benevolent. We're sitting here discussing whether they're good or bad. Nothing good enters your bedroom as you're sleeping and takes advantage of you, human or otherwise. Now, this person wrote, the most paranormal event in my life involved an NDE in a sense that I shifted into a parallel universe. Now, keep in mind, some of these could be fake, some people could be liars, some of it could be part of the psyop. But how much? I was about 20 years old and driving on the highway one afternoon. This was South Dakota, where the speed limit is 80, so naturally I would have been going about 85. I was sleepy. My eyelids got heavy, and I woke up when my car went onto the shoulder and was heading toward a ditch. And I sharply corrected, which caused my car to spin out, all wheels on the ground with the car spinning around like a clock hand. Everything slowed down Matrix style. I started doing things with my hands and feet that don't make any sense to me. It was purely automatic. He had only been driving for a year or two at that point and never spun out before. I was just doing stuff. The car spun around a couple of times and everything was just a whooshy blur outside of the car. When all was said and done, the car straightened out, pointing in the right direction, but now was going pretty slow because of the lost momentum. I didn't hit anyone or anything. To be fair, this was in South Dakota, so there's nothing there. Anyway, the car straightened out and gently rolled into a ditch. I was in shock. I got out to check for damage on myself in the car, and there was none. Got back in the car, reversed my way into the highway, and drove the rest of the way home. Immediately after this happened, all I could think was that I died or got brutally maimed in a bunch of alternate universes, but somehow I ended up in the one where the car perfectly corrected itself without further harm. I've seen some posts on Reddit and elsewhere about some kind of giant time wheel. Now, I've heard this in a lot of old stories like H.P. Lovecraft and old testimonies about purgatory, and seen it in some newer testimonies about dreams and stuff too. So this one kind of resonates with me, but in an icky way, and I'll get to that maybe later. I've seen some posts on Reddit and elsewhere about some kind of giant time wheel that lets you navigate similar parallel worlds. Now, there's a show on Prime right now, and it's called The Wheel of Time. I have not watched it. I started watching it, but the one actress rubs me funny, so I haven't watched it. Similar to what you're talking about, it resonates with me on my personal experience, even though I generally am a skeptical person. That's one more where they felt like things were different. Okay. This guy, the Widowmaker heart attack for 36 hours. Always thought I didn't make it during the helicopter ride between hospitals. I'm eerily calm about death since that incident. Like the other post I read, I've been noticing Mandela effects since. I've also noticed differences inside my house, stuff I own that I swear we never owned. Husband swears it's been there forever. Small stuff, like the patterns on our dressers are different. Own them 10 years, so they're not new. No other explanation. Now, this person says, and his name is Con Artist 101, there is another explanation. The physiological effects cause some very nominal brain damage, loss, or jumbling of memories. I've experienced something similar. Do you see the gaslighting? People can't stand when other people have spiritual experiences and they can't relate to them. Just like the internal dialogue thing. People that don't have internal dialogue get unreasonably mad and angry at people who do have internal dialogue. If you appreciate the material, I would appreciate the thumbs up, though it doesn't really do anything for the channel. Lets me know that I'm tracking somewhere. Okay, so now this person is the original poster. And this is the person who said maybe we're in purgatory. Now, again, if purgatory is real and we're suspending all our belief, we're just looking at something right now. If purgatory is real, at the end days, there will be no need for it anymore. That could explain why we're seeing glitches and breakdowns and why it's like home, but it's not completely home, is because it's some type of in between that it's kind of like jail, but very soon we'll be out because there will be no more need for purgatory. And the good news is that if you're in purgatory, well, you can't really get any lower. Well, usually you don't. That's not how purgatory is supposed to work. It's a refining process. But let's read here and see what they say. But now, again, I think I found something that won't solve a lot of this, but will definitely be a big piece to the puzzle. I think I found more evidence that America is not where or what they say it is. The problem I have with this is it just me? Was I just raised not being told where, for some weird, dumb reason, was I the only one raised like this? Not knowing where I am, not being told the truth. Or are there more people out there? Because it would hold to reason that they're not going to allow us to communicate. And if the only ones listening to my videos are people who personally are quote unquote against my testimony or my being obedient to God, doing what he has asked me to do here, um, if these videos aren't getting out any further, then there is no point in me revealing certain things because it's not going to help anybody. If I keep it to myself, at least everyone else who figured it out, well, anyways. This person is the original poster. Now they're going to expand upon their theory about purgatory. Pay attention because, again, there's stuff here that resonates. To clarify my interpretation of purgatory, it is along the lines of Dante's description of hell, purgatory and paradise. Now think of the old drawings of the earth with all these spheres around it, all these different lines going out to the 10th heaven, right? So think of that. I don't think there are three distinct places, but rather various levels or spheres to each one. Think like spheres inside of spheres. And each one would have a window opening, like Spaceballs, when that princess left the vacuum of her own atmosphere and they actually opened a window for her in the firmament. Something like that. Let's say someone starts on level 3 of hell. Who knows, 9 in total? Perhaps an NDE is moving up a sphere from 3 to 2. Imagine them like parallel universes in a larger multiverse schematic, since level 3 of hell is actually a smaller sphere universe inside the slightly larger sphere universe of this new level 2. There's going to be a lot of similarities or overlap between the two places. What if there's a certain component or substance or something that causes the difference between the spheres? Similar to the growth of a tree creating a new ring inside of its trunk. See, that makes sense to me right there. Each year, it consumes light and water and nutrients, which in turn results in the tree growth, which then creates another ring outside of the ring made from the previous year's growth. So basically, what they're talking about is like quantum decisions there. And again, if you've been with the channel any length of time, we looked into this being a part of the Book of Mormon. When Moses is talking to Father on top of the mountain, he is telling him how there are different earths, and that is not the only one. That's where they get the idea of each one of them will be like Christ. They will be a god of their own earth. If I understand their theology correctly, I'm not an LDS person. I'm not of that LDS. I'm not a Latter-day Saint, so I don't know for certain, but I believe if I followed their conversations properly, because I've welcomed them into my house before. Okay. So that's basically what she's saying is like these, every time you make a decision, something changes. So it says the new ring still contains the inner rings made the previous years. The only thing different about this new ring is the tiny space between the previous ring and it. She's saying basically you have a new boundary. So applying this to the spheres of hell, purgatory, and heaven, when you level up to a new ring or sphere, 90% of your reality will be the same. Just as 90% of the new tree ring is the same part of the tree as the previous ring. However, there is 10% of new growth, right? That's what she's saying there. What if that 10% creates the changes that we consider to be the Mandela effect? Who knows what the substance that results in the creation of a new sphere or ring? What if it's time or some combination of time and an unknown substance that creates what we call dark matter? Now, again, not all of this has to be true, but she's the one who made the post, and some of that resonates with me. This person says they've experienced MEs, but never had an NDE. Okay. This person said I should have died from an OD years ago. After that NDE, that's when I found out Nelson Mandela died in 2013, even though I learned prior that he died in prison, a martyr. His username has Depp in it, and you see the first half of his username. Again, they show you who they are. I don't trust that person. I don't trust that answer. And I'm just being real. All right. Again, they can change anything digitally. They can make it look like Nelson was released. They can make it look like he died. We don't know because we don't know him. This is why when I say take Mandela effects to your own life, do you notice things in your life that are different? Do you notice people that are different? Do you notice buildings that are different, that are out of place, that are new, roads that were one way your whole life and now they're suddenly different? To me, personal testimony matters more here because we can talk about brand and label changes all day long. It doesn't matter what the company says. And again, I'm just being real. Person is saying it could be related to your oxygen or your brain being starved of oxygen. It says there are some NDEs, this is the original poster, that have scientific evidence proving otherwise, that it's not just a lack of oxygen. Check out Survivor on Netflix. has some good examples and super interesting. Even if all NDE experiencers are oxygen starved, it would still not explain why there are so many common and specific examples of the Mandela effect. Okay. Exactly. Why wouldn't we all just have random memory issues? Why would it be these specific things? Okay. Now, this right here, this one really, really resonates with me. And oh, I'll tell you my 2012 experience, uh, almost the same time my dad died. It was probably, well, no, my dad, I found out he was sick in October 2011. He died in September 2012. So this was December 2011. This was right before he passed, the year before he passed away. So I'll tell you that in 1 second. This person says, I think we all died in 2012, to be honest. After that, the Mandela effect started in 2013 for me. The best way I can say how I felt since, like, imagine, okay. The best way I can say of how I felt since is like imagine going to your local Target that you've been going to for the last 20 years, but now when you walk in, it feels different. Like you're walking in there for the first time in your life. You've got all these memories from the same place, but it just doesn't feel like it's the same place. It's weird to explain unless you already know what I'm talking about. That one resonates with me too. I don't know about you guys. And again, please converse amongst yourselves with each other. I check back with the chat every few seconds. That one resonates with me. So in 2012, hospice gave a dinner, a Christmas dinner to my dad. So it was me and the boys. And this time, instead of the spouse bringing me, because he probably had to play family with his other family, now that I know some more of what was going on, we were given a dinner. And so my mother-in-law, alleged mother-in-law, and his aunt, my husband's aunt, went to Pittsburgh, and they went to the casino while me and my boys played chess and had dinner with my dad. Fast forward to the ride home. Now, again, every time that I was missing time or things got weird, somebody in this family was always around. So I don't know if it's them. I don't know if it was a collective thing, but this is what happened. I very rarely will sleep when my children are that like I'm a mom, right? So I'm responsible for them. But we're in the car and the car's kind of lulling me to sleep and I'm in the back with my kids and it's dark and we had just spent the day in Pittsburgh and it's mentally draining. So I'm like dozing in and out, but it's a weird doze because I can't seem to wake myself up out of it, you know? And I look over and I remember asking them, like, something happened, but I don't remember what roused me, like a bump, something. And I look over and there's all these lights. And I remember pointing to them and I'm like, what is all that? What are all these lights for? And nobody would answer me. And it looked like an airport, but not an airport because there were too many lights. I don't even know how to explain it. They were all red traffic lights, but it's not like any airport I had ever seen before. It almost looked like this is gonna sound really strange. If you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all those lights that lit up the top of the mountain when they were there waiting on the spaceship, it was kind of like that, but it was to the left. It was on the other side of the trees. And I remember this is like in slow motion because we're driving on the freeway, right? So like it had to have been really quick. But I remember his aunt or whatever saying, "I thought she was asleep, didn't you say?" And then suddenly I was out again. But again, the 2 or 3 times that I have issues with, like, sleep or you know what I mean, not being able to wake myself up or sleep paralysis, one of these individuals was always around. And I didn't again, it's one of those things you don't think of right away. It doesn't come back to you until, like, something triggers the memory. So it wasn't anything I dwelled on for a while or nothing. It wasn't anything like where I was like, "Oh, this is strange," you know? But it was the same time period again, and we've talked about all these different things. And I tell my stories because, again, maybe somebody has a similar story. So that is my 2012-ish. My bad experiences. One was not on anything. Second time was on DMT, and it was after my dad had passed. Allegedly, we went through a portal while we were driving in a car because we couldn't get anywhere. It was like we went from being going normal speed to, like, feeling like you were driving through bubble gum, and again, there was, like, this iridescent tunnel vision. But again, I'm on DMT, so who knows what it is. I do not promote the use of drugs, I'm not a doctor, all my disclaimers are in the description box. Um, so those are my experiences with this, okay? Now, there is more here. Now, this person says purgatory makes sense in my opinion. The way out of purgatory is to learn to love everything, even the purgatory itself. But the only way to learn that lesson is if you have resets, because if you don't have any form of reset, you would never be able to learn to love your scenario, or you would only ever sink deeper into despair. I'm going to disagree with this for several reasons. Number one, again, the poster, Zen, again, not every other religion or faith system is demonic. I don't go that route. At the same time, there is a specific couple of groups that are trying to psyop Americans in particular at this time, and you'd have to watch the rest of the channel to actually understand how that all fits. But they show you who they are in their usernames, in their pictures. I know who's on my channel, who's just there for the information I share. The second I see the username, I know when it's, for example, my spouse. Somebody commented last night who's never commented on my channel, but I know it's him because of the username. And again, you can say whatever you want, but that doesn't make it doesn't amount to a hill of beans, in my own life. And this is why I tell you to go back to your own experiences. This makes no sense. This is a person wanting you to consent to the idea of resets, right? Because everybody, that's a real big word. And I told you how it was stamped on the side of my Medicaid renewal last year, how the word reset was over there. And I told the worker about it. I said, "What does this mean?" "I've never heard of that. I don't know." Okay, so all these weird things that I have happen, it's not as if I don't know if they thought it would drive me nuts already. I think we're all a little mad here. Okay, so resets, they want you to consent to that. I went over all of this in the fake reincarnation videos. I know I don't know why people want that to be real. Okay, I really don't. Why you'd want to, and here's why it doesn't track with me. I don't believe it is the one true creator God's system for this place, because if you constantly get reset and you can't, if it is a part of you, if sin, right, is a part of you, like a spiritual disease, a spiritual sickness, um, then it needs to be rooted out. And the only way that's gonna happen is by remembering your mistakes and how badly they hurt you and those around you. If you keep getting reset in this reincarnation vibe and everything erased, you're gonna keep making the same mistakes, sometimes probably worse mistakes, because you can't remember where you've already been. You see what I mean? And if you can't remember where you already been, you don't know where you're going and you don't know where you are. So it doesn't track with me as being something. If I can poke holes in it and I am definitely not God, then I know it's not a way of God. Do you see what I mean? If I can poke holes in it and I'm just a and I'm lower end of the spectrum, and again, I don't have a learning disability, right? I'm book smart. I remember things I read. Anyway, I'm not going to defend myself against those people who make videos about me. You either understand the things I talk about or you don't, and that's okay too. Um, this guy says, that's why I always struggle with the matrix or purgatory argument where someone will say this isn't real life, so what does it matter? And they sink into depression. Well, personally, I see this as my reality, even if it is different than real life. So I might as well make the best of it. That's kind of how I feel about it right now, is we've got to make the best of it no matter what. And we're expected to walk this out the same way. Now I'm going to show you something else that I put up. Give me a second. This was a link. This is from 8 years ago. Now, this is a link. Right now, this thread that you're looking at, up here, somebody posted this, okay? So it's important you understand the process and how I get from one thing to another. I think it's important. So I'm going to switch the screen I'm sharing with you, and we're going to move to a different scenario, and then we're going to go to the tribulation. Why am I doing this? Because You can't know when you are if you don't know where you are. And you can't know where you are, really, if you don't know who you are. Do you see what I'm saying? I can't tell you who you are. Only you and God can decide that. But together, maybe we can decide where and when we are. I hope that makes sense. On the 15th of July, 2013, about 7:45, I was on my way to work and approaching the intersection and getting ready to take a left-hand turn. Now, this is the person, this is a longer account of the car accident, okay? Now, this is about that wheel, the wheel of time, that we touched on a little earlier. But I think I'm gonna change my mind. Hold, please, while I pull up the tribulation paper. Why am I gonna change my mind? Because again, we gotta decide when and where we are, and the wheel of time, again, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but that's gonna be its own video because insofar as this, it doesn't apply. All right, so I'm gonna share this page. Is it sharing with you? Yes, good. I'm gonna close these just for now, I think. There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. Let me tell you the thought process for this right quick. Just quickly. It's not gonna take again, you gotta give people time to we need to start taking our time. I got to thinking if the tribulation is only 7 years, why is this still continuing if we're in tribulation? Or I'm wrong and we're not in tribulation, which is important to know as well. But there's also another possibility, and I had thought about this possibility, and you've heard me the last few videos. I've church teacher. I probably don't know as much about this as them. I should just, stay in my lane and not even look at this. But I figured, why not run a search? A search isn't going to hurt anything. What's really weird is when I did this search, this paper was exactly a year old. This lesson from this website was exactly a year old. So, again, let me preface this by saying I decided I would do a quick search because, again, I'm not a church father. I'm not a church teacher. I've not been to seminary school. Maybe, and I need to show I can be obedient under the proper guidance, that under God I can do what he wants me to do and what, appears to be his will, what we're told is his will, not cheat, steal, all that type of stuff. Um, but I got to thinking that the fig tree and the last generation and this term generation, how it's used over and over and over again. Now I know that there 7 is emblematic of the book of Revelation. You've got 7 seals, you've got 7 churches, you've got 7 angels over the 7 churches. um so 7 seems to be the magic number there, right? But if this is the great tribulation, there has to, and I'll go one further. There has to be some explanation for why people have changed so much over the past 4 years. And it started before the lockdowns. So people that say, "Oh, it was just the lockdowns that did this to everybody," for me and for a lot of people, this started before the lockdowns. People's attitudes changing, people's personalities changing. Heck, my family, the way they smell changed. And any woman who's a mother understands, yes, that's a primal animalistic thing that we have, but we know how our children and how our spouse smells, no matter whether they're wearing deodorant or not. Everybody has their own pheromones, right? It's a throwback to an earlier time of civilization. Anyways, I figured there has to be some explanation for why people are changing. What if tribulation is longer than 7 years? Well, you could say that the two witnesses, one prophesies for the first half, 3.5 years. The other prophesies for the second half, 3.5 years. That's 7 years. And I'm also going to throw something else in the mix. So keep this in the back of your mind. You might want to take notes. Um, you've got the 7 seals, you've got all that sevens, right? And then you've got the changes in people. So when you're a biblical person, the only thing I've been able to find that is true over the last 8 years is scripture. And I didn't think I'd be this person. I was a makeup tutorialist. I worked at a bank. I worked in a nursing home. I worked for a cell phone company. Like, I didn't think any of this stuff would ever be anything that I pushed. Okay? Let me just be very clear about that. This is not a position or a situation into which I envisioned myself being. All right? So if you got the two witnesses and one is 3.5 years in the beginning and one is 3.5 years at the end, we are also told that God shortens the time. Now, if God shortens time, that means for us to notice that a time is shortened, we would have to first all agree on a set time. So then you have to look across the whole earth. What is the same all across the earth as far as time goes? Well, not time zones, because everybody's in a different day at a different hour. So that's got to be thrown out. God doesn't shorten the time zones or do anything there. What is one thing that's agreed upon all across the earth? Well, it's not the time of the tribulation. God doesn't shorten the time of the tribulation because, again, that is not a set number. We might have a lot of teachings about it being 7 years, but we have no definitive proof of that. So if God is to shorten time, guys, that means that it is a time that we already agree upon. It's already set, right? So, what time do we all agree upon all across the earth, no matter what time zone we're in? 24 hours in a day. Or daylight. Maybe God has to shorten the hours that the sun shines because it's harmful to us, or there would be no flesh left, right? But again, every verse has at least 3 definitions. Okay, so we lost the stragglers. They've already left and decided this video isn't for them. But that's okay. My channel is for those who seek, and there's not very many of us anymore, and that's all right. So, rebutting of the fig tree. Why is it possible that tribulation lasts longer than 7 years? In a nutshell, here we go. Because we get told over and over about the last generation, and this generation shall not pass. And the fig tree rebutting. So, how long is a generation? And I said it a couple of streams ago, 40 years. So I decided, you know what? I'm not a church teacher. People, especially men, don't want me, quote unquote, teaching scripture. They say that I have no right to do this, but I do have a right because everybody else is wrong. And I don't mind saying that. We are in a time in history, in the timeline, when almost everybody, at least big masses of people, are infamously wrong, guys. When you follow the trends, what are you doing? You are usually going the wrong way. When you follow things that trend, when you follow things that are popular, when you follow things that are hyped up, what does that mean? What does that mean? Most of us know on this channel. That means you're in the wrong because most of the people, anything that trends in this world, you should be running in the other direction. It is the wrong way to go. A generation is 40 years, and sorry, I am covering my head because it's what I do to show respect. And because I like my hair on my head, the hair that I have, and I think that's also a problem. If these individuals are who and what I think they are, then I should be covering my head all the time because I do not think they are human beings that I live around. In a nutshell, could the tribulation be 40 years long? And I know people aren't going to want to hear this. They're not going to want to talk about this. They do not want the tribulation to be 40 years long. But guess what? I said, you know what? I'm gonna research this. I'm gonna punch in, and here's what I punched in. I punched in, is the tribulation truly just 7 years? And I found that not everybody, it's not a popular opinion, but not everybody believes it's 7 years long. Now, this is gonna be a little bit of reading. I'm not gonna read it all. The idea is to bring this stuff to you so you can do your own work for your own salvation. We are to participate in our own exit of the matrix here, or you don't get to exit. Work is required, and it's not a dirty word. They don't you notice like everything that we're supposed to be doing, they tell us not to do? Christ did it all. Don't do that. You don't need to do anything. Christ did it. Christ did it. In the Gospels, we learn that Jesus taught his disciples two parables concerning a fig tree. The first was presented about a year before his death. He spake also this parable: A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon, and found none. Then said he unto the dresser of his vineyard, the dresser of his vineyard, the one who tends it and makes it, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth it to the ground? And if it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after that thou shalt cut it down. Now, again, first you have to go through the old ground. So they're going to tell us probably why they think it's why people went to the 7-year teaching. Okay. So again, let's be patient. What did this mean? The standard interpretation accepted by Bible scholars is that the owner of the vineyard is the Father, the vine dresser, that is the keeper of the vineyard, is Christ, and the tree is Israel. Because Jesus' ministry to the Jewish people had been conducted for 3 years with hardly any fruit, the Father was ready to set Israel aside, but the Son pleaded for the nation, asking that it be given the opportunity to produce fruit after yet another year of cultivation. It is not stated, but clearly implied, that the Father consented to the Son's request. Since Jesus died on Passover in AD 33, the parables must therefore date early in AD 32. Okay, so we're following along. So, parable of the fig tree emerged in a discussion that Jesus had with some of his disciples on Tuesday evening between Palm Sunday and the day of his crucifixion. They had asked him, When shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? By these things they meant the destruction of the temple, a catastrophe that Jesus had predicted, which some say already happened. A Catholic teaching is that it already happened. Some of these things in Revelation have already happened. We are waiting for the rest to unfold, which means it's not one seal per year then if some of it already happened. Do you see what I mean? So just again, bear with me. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and unto them, See ye not all these things? Not be There shall not be left here one stone other that shall not be thrown down. When his disciples referred to his coming, the Greek word parousia, speaking of the glorious presence that Jesus will manifest to all observers when he assumes his place as world ruler with irresistible power. Future events in his lengthy Olivet discourse. Between the first and middle sections, he inserted a direct answer to the disciples' question. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. When he measured the time interval as less than the span of one generation, what did he mean by a generation? The history of Israel's wanderings in the wilderness had made the Jews familiar with measuring a generation as 40 years. And the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord was consumed. What did he mean when he spoke of the fig tree leafing out? In relation to their question when the temple would be destroyed, he was referring to the fig tree that he found on the previous Monday morning as they were coming into the city from Bethany. And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of the figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. And when even was come, he was out of the city. And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter, calling to remembrance, saith unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursed is withered away. The tree was putting out new leaves, but it was barren of fruit, so he cursed it. As in the first parable of the fig tree, the tree represented the nation of Israel. Despite the new green growth picturing Jewish religiosity, cursed the tree because the nation it represented had no spiritual fruit. The critical test had been his triumphal entry into the city on the previous day, even though he had provided many proofs of his identity during the previous 3 years. The masses, as well as their leaders, did not accept him as their Messiah. Therefore, he cursed the fig tree when he passed it on the following morning. And on the next day, his disciples could see that it was dried up from the roots, its death pictured as the destruction that would fall on Israel because they rejected their Messiah, a destruction signified by the first meaning of all things being fulfilled. And indeed, this destruction came to pass within a generation measured as 40 years. Jesus gave his discourse on future events in AD 33, and Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70. But what leafing out of the fig tree would initiate the generation preceding Christ's glorious return to establish his kingdom on earth? Basically, the question he's posing here is, what is the sign that will begin here, as far as the parable goes, right? Because he said the leafing out will initiate that generation. So how do we know when that generation is upon the earth, basically, is what he's asking. Some influential interpretations have emerged in modern times that have proved to be false and very damaging to Christian faith. Some call this the wearing out of the saints, okay? But if you go back on YouTube, people have been talking about the Antichrist and the rapture since the beginning of YouTube. I think it was Obama. He was Antichrist, right? Everybody, Bush, McCain, Cheney, all these different people were allegedly the Antichrist. The rapture was allegedly coming. How many people do you think have fallen away because of false date setting? People who didn't even read the full Bible, maybe who could have gotten to full faith, but their faith wasn't even allowed to bloom because of false teachings or because everybody's waiting for the rapture, waiting for the rapture. I'm telling you, the people who are pushing you to just watch for that event want you to give up your faith when tribulation comes and you've not been rescued. Now, my understanding of it is that the pulling away happens by Christ sends out his four angels to the four corners of the earth to gather up his elect, capital E. That happens right before wrath. However, there is also reason to believe, I believe Matthew says, after this tribulation, then shall come the harpazo, all right? It actually says after there. So everyone talking pre-trib, all you got to read is one simple little word, and it says after, all right? But again, the whole point is to discourage you. Do you see people leave the video when they don't hear what they want to hear? That's not a truth seeker. If you're just here to hear what you want to hear, well, that's when you're going to be tossed for like the wind from doctrine to doctrine. And you're not, when hard times come, you'll be tossed about. You won't have an anchor. You'll have nothing holding you down. Ironically, that's the name of this church. Okay. One assumed that the leafing out of the fig tree took place when the state of Israel was founded in 1948, on the assumption that the Jesus' return would happen 40 years later and the rapture would precede his return by 7 interpretation affirmed that the rapture would take place in 81, but it did not. Then later, another interpretation became popular, which argued that the leafing out represented Jewish repossession of Jerusalem in 1967, to be followed by the rapture in 2000. This prediction also failed to come true, so here was another shallow interpretation that had very harmful effects on the church. A correct interpretation of the second parable of the fig tree requires that we look at Revelation 6, a chapter that reveals what will happen on earth after the Lamb, that is Christ, opens each of the first 6 seals, binding the heavenly book sealed with 7 seals. The account of events after the 6th seal is opened begins with obscure imagery. And beheld, when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And a lot of this happened when he was crucified as well. There was allegedly an earthquake and an eclipse because of what happened at Christ. And the stars of heaven fell into earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And after these things I saw 4 angels, here it is, standing on the 4 corners, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the seas, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Revelation 6:12 through 13 and 7:1 through 3. The story of a fig tree losing fruit due to a mighty wind and then coming under angelic protection will, from our perspective, be considered the third parable of the fig tree. Although the prediction in verse 13 will likely have a literal fulfillment, that is, the will indeed be bombarded by meteors or some other object from space, I think Uriel's discs. Several terms employed here are symbolic. Again, the fig tree again stands for it produces represents true believers in Christ. The stars of heaven picture angels of God as they do also in other texts. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the bottomless pit. Now, let me take a quick break here and to let you know the information I stumbled upon that anybody can stumble upon is both discouraging and encouraging. It is encouraging because it is just one more bit of evidence, I believe. And again, it's very small, guys, so don't get too excited. But it's more evidence, I believe, that America is Israel. Why does this matter? Because we have to learn what a fig tree actually is. And I'm wondering if it isn't some type of cactus. But anyway, moving on. We also have to know how things moved about and what they look like from the earth. As far as I would assume everyone will see the seven stars falling, right? But it's important to know where Christ walked, where he was crucified. And I believe that God is unlocking these little bits of information to me at the same time for a reason. So I'm going to read a little more of this, and then I might bebop over to what I found, or at least read it to you because I have it on my phone. It's it's very tiny, it's very small, but it seems to go with all of this. So let me read a little more of this. Daniel 7:2 through 3. These mighty winds strove upon the sea. In my commentary, the book of Daniel, I show the sea represents the whole body of earthly nations. I don't know if I agree with that. Furthermore, in the period of history foreseen by Daniel, these winds whipped up the waters to such turbulence that the sea brought forth four monstrous beasts. I show that these beasts represent the four greatest empires that emerged in the ancient Middle East. That is possible. Thus, the winds must be the agency responsible for inciting the nations to violence, the tendency of which is to give one nation mastery over surrounding nations. What is that agency? In Aramaic, as in Hebrew, the word for wind, ruach, has a double meaning. It can also breath or spirit. I told you this in just a couple days ago. The winds that provoke violence on earth are indeed spirits, specifically evil ones or fallen angels. One of the main lessons of the book of Daniel is that the angels of God are locked in constant struggle with the angels of Satan. As each side seeks to control the course of history, the outcome of the struggle is never in doubt. God's purposes will prevail. Yet the evil angels are by no means powerless. No doubt their chief purpose is to fan the destabilizing and corrupting influences that will eventually put all power in the hands of a ruler fully possessed by Satan, namely the Antichrist. The book of Daniel teaches that one purpose of the holy angels is to strengthen relatively good governments. When a mighty angel appeared to Daniel, he said, Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Daniel 11:1. Darius was a ruler who submitted to divine direction. The four winds mentioned in Revelation 7:1 must therefore represent demonic agencies, as they do also in the book of Daniel. I don't know if I agree with that. Follow me for a second. Even good angels are frightening. They're fearsome to us, to human beings. Most people cower when they present themselves, according to biblical and other, ancient scripture. The Anunnaki. People just fell down. You couldn't help yourself because you're human, you're tiny, they're big. I mean, what else needs said? And they're angels. God uses good and evil to his will. And it's very possible it could be good angels because they're already in charge of the four winds. That doesn't mean they're wicked. They're just in charge. That's what they're principality is, sorry. And I could be wrong, but I'm just saying it's important to note that, like, God uses the evil acts of the fallen angels, and he uses his holy angels. All these things work to good in the end. God transmutes or alchemizes that energy into a better form, which is why he is God and we are not. Okay, so let's. All right, so I got to touch on something real quick. And I'm going to do my best not to get excited over something very small and insignificant, but it's had me to a point where I've almost vomited. Like, I know you don't want to hear that. And I really want to show my face just to show you, like, this is honest to goodness. I don't know what to call it. Excitement. Hold, please. I'm grabbing a screenshot that I took off of my phone because I have to remember the right name. So, most of the pictures we see of the Grand Canyon are fake. I can't believe I'm saying that because some people are going to still be in the comment section, but I've been there. But I've been there. Like, like, I have to believe you. Most of the pictures we see of the Grand Canyon are fake. How do I know this? My sister-in-law, one of the only trips she's been on since I moved here to the Grand Canyon. The picture she took looks like everybody else's picture in front of the Grand Canyon. Erin Valenti, remember who she is? The missing tech girl who invented Tinker apps. The one who was probably ended because of that. Called her mom and dad, talking about we're already in the Matrix, blah, 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 blase, blase. What's the other girl whose boyfriend allegedly killed her? Gabby Petito. All of these people had their picture taken in front of the Grand Canyon, and they all look exactly the same except different people. I'm not showing you them yet because I'm working on the idea for a video, but follow me here. I told you that the Native American Indians were the true Jewish people and or the lost tribes. Nobody wanted to hear it. And then I found out that I'm not the first person to receive a download or a prophetic vision like that for belief pretty standardly. Me crazy, but it's an actual doctrine somewhere. I'll skip over it, whatever. Then I told you America was Israel and that USA is with them for a reason, and that flights are always different. Flight paths when they look crazy and wonky because we are not where they say we are. Every trip that you take or vacation that you take, are you not stuck in traffic so you really don't know how long it takes you to get from one place to the other? Why did one day it take me 24 hours to cross the state of North Carolina, but I got to Florida in 3 days? How did that happen? The Grand Canyon is not what they say it is, and they don't show just anyone at the Grand Canyon, and there aren't as many people as they say there are, and it's a lot easier to corral us targeted individuals than we know because the population is near what they say it is, at least not for sentient breathing beings that have to sleep and eat to live and suck air. And yeah, this topic makes me angry because it's a very big lie. So I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to pull up a visual for you guys to see while I tell you this next little bit. And then we'll go back to what we're looking at, but just follow me. Hold, please. I'm doing a search. All right, so I'm going to show you how fake this all is. Just because I have experience with background erasers, Photoshop, I think AI has been around a lot longer than they're telling us. So, can anyone tell me what's wrong with all of these pictures? Can you tell me what's wrong? I bet you can't. All of them. What's wrong with all of them? Almost all of them. Do you see it? Can anyone see it? You guys are welcome to like contribute here. This is how I know who's watching me. You just want information. You don't actually. How you doing, Jay? Everything going good for you today? Do you know what's wrong with this picture? How about this one? Do you see it right there? How about there? Do you see it here? Please tell me you can see it in this picture. Anybody? Why am I going over this? Because yesterday I saw another TikTok compilation of a young man in front of the Grand Canyon, and he says, "But where's the canyon at? Remember I told you that the cameramen are our friends these days, that they're telling us a lot of stuff? Huh? Remember?" And look, people nobody wants to know. People don't wanna know where they're at or what time it is. I've got one person watching and another like. How that happened, I don't know. Check this out. When in nature, ever do you see a completely straight line? I'll tell you, as an artist, never. You never ever see that in nature. You never see a completely straight line. What does that tell you? What does that tell me? That they're hiding something. What are they hiding? Something in the background. And I'm going to throw an idea out there, and I'm not saying this part is correct, but I'm saying just picture it, okay? You guys remember, and Indiana Jones shows us a lot. You remember Indiana Jones and uh the Grail, the search for the Grail, the one about the Nazis, ironically enough. Remember when he has to do a leap of faith and it's just a optical illusion that there's like a natural bridge underneath of him? Remember what it looked like? Because remember, it's a movie and it's still just a set. Didn't it kind of look a lot like this? That painted little slab looked a lot like that. Why would they do this? One reason, one possibility. What if there's buildings in here? What if there's the tops of mosques and cathedrals in here? What if there's a castle in there? What if there's villages in there? Whatever it is they're hiding, they're doing it right here with the skyline. Why would they give you a fake skyline of the Grand Canyon? I'm not saying that the Grand Canyon itself isn't real. I'm not saying that you can't visit it. I'm saying that there are people like me that they won't take any place anymore because they realize how wide open my eyes are. I'm saying that not everybody is allowed to travel. That if you're on a do not fly list, it's probably because you're a targeted individual. And it's got everything to do with the fact that we're being called home. We're being called home. TIs, whoever's watching this video who gave it a thumbs up, we're being called home. Why? What's another prophecy of the end days? I'm shaking. I can't even talk about it. That the true tribes of God will be called back to Israel and none will be able to stop them. I'm shaking as I tell you this part. This is why we're getting all these downloads. This is why we're having all these prophetic visions. This is why I believe it is the end days, and not because of something somebody else has told me. Is because I feel the call in my blood. I feel it, and I know some of you do. We've talked about it, about being targeted individuals, about people gaslighting us to stay in one area or to go to this area or not to this area. Like we're cattle, right? In the stalls. It says in the book that in the end days, that the lost tribes, that the people who have been scattered to the four winds will start to come home. It is a calling in your blood and you're being called home. And that home is, I think, in the four corners. It's in America. The question is it actually west or is it east? Because everything here is the opposite. But I'm showing you in real time, right now, right here, what to look for. This right here. Nothing in nature, especially something they tell us this was erosion and all this stuff. Nothing is that straight. You see this right here? That's a mess up. Somebody messed it up there. See it? How it's glitchy looking? And you'll say, oh, well, that's just rocks. Why are they all like that? There's something here you're not supposed to see. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you. Aaron Valeni. Everyone that has went missing under shady circumstances, everyone that's a part of their club ends up getting their picture taken in front of this. And they all look the same. How about Gabby Petito? Let's find her. And look, this one was airing on the news. I think she's a fake person. She looks kind of AI here. She also has the last name of somebody, the only person who escaped the Son of Sam murders. Gabby Petito. I don't forget things I see, very rarely. Gabby Petito. When did she start going crazy? The closer she got to here. Were they allowed there? Were they on the list that says they're allowed to go to these places? Or did the cops stalk them, give them a hard time until they left that area? Let's see, did she get to the Grand Canyon? I'm pretty sure she did. Gosh, she looks so much like my sister. It's wild. And they almost all have this picture taken too. Kanika Jennings, same picture. The angel wings. And ironically, they're deceased a few days later. Are they deceased? Is death real? Or is death already been thrown away? And Satan's just out here deceiving everyone again. Because I tell you what, I don't agree that we're in the short season of Satan, but it would explain all of the things that I'm finding. So I'm going to pull up a specific place in the Grand Canyon and I'm going to show you a really big clue that I got the other day or yesterday. All right. Kugveni. Now you guys know that languages are a thing of mine, that I just can't leave them alone, right? The other day I gave you Hebrew, Aramaic words for healing, right? I was looking at the Grand Canyon, kind of wondering, why are they using Hebrew? And you're going to say, that's not Hebrew, Jen. What are you on about? Oh, no, it's not. Let me say this. Let me pronounce this word. Let's break down this word, shall we? That they chose to give this name to part of the Grand Canyon. Aita Kukveni. Aita Kukveni. Kukvenai. Aita. Okay, so Ruach HaKodesh is Aramaic Hebrew for the Holy Spirit. Ruach HaKodesh. You have to like every in your throat, right? Aita Kukveni. I knew as soon as I saw it where its roots were. Now I don't know what this is going to tell me because I already looked it up on my phone. So it says the word Aita has several etymological origins depending on context. And again, this is where it gets kind of weird because we're supposed to be in America. Guess whose language is very much like Aramaic and Hebrew? And yes, I'm getting excited because I've been talking about this for years. What other prophecy do I point you guys to about this time in the world? All the time. The Hopi, right? Aren't I always saying that the Hopi prophecy and the book of Revelation almost line up? And didn't I also say that the tribes, that the true Israelites, the true Jewish people, that tribe or whatever is the Native American Indians? And if the richest people run this place or they get special treats, how much do you think it would cost to get a group of people to dress up in fake costumes to pretend they were something called Indians? I don't know, maybe a few casinos? Because you know who manages the casinos in Vegas, right? Native Americans. Yeah, they worked their way up there through the mob. How did that happen, guys? How did it switch hands? How do I know all this? So I'm going to read to you what's on my phone, and then I'll read you this bit, and I'll show you where it's actually at. Itakugveni and Hopi means our ancestral footprints. So it's saying that the Grand Canyon is a footprint. Okay. Hebrew language, the last name, Ita, might be linked to Hebrew, where it can also mean strong or firm. It could also relate to Itai or Itai, which can mean with me. Sanskrit, Ita, has various meanings, including here, from this place, beyond this, and beside this. Okay. Context is key, it says. So you mean to tell me a place in America is named after the Hopi tribes, which is cool because they live there, right? They were there first. Well, then why is the Hopi language in English? Granted, we're not talking about their caricatures or their alphabet. We're talking about how we can read it in English. Why is it almost the exact same as Hebrew and Aramaic? if it's another nation, if it's another landmass. You for somebody to go to the Grand Canyon and tell me if I'm right. Well, that's just it. I'm gonna have to go myself to get an answer. And I have to pray that God blesses my journey because I can't sit still no more. I've done the work for this. I've done all the praying. I've done all the fasting. Like, I need to see this for myself. Only if I put my feet in that sand, only if I pick up some of that dirt, am I going to know for certain if it resonates as true. So, Aita Kukveni, okay? If we break that down, now it says where our ancestors roamed, but let's remove this word and do it this way, word by word. Aita. The name of the Baj Noa Vo Aita Kukvene Grand Canyon National Monument. In the Hopi language, Aita Kukvene means our ancestral footprints. Makes sense so far. The Grand Canyon is considered sacred to many tribal nations. Okay, so we got to think about this. In looking at prophecy, if America is Israel, what areas have we pushed people out of? Because that's what happens to the Jewish people, to the original tribes, is they get kicked out, right? They get scattered to the four winds. Okay? Scattered to the four winds, the four corners, like the four corners in America, but it says four corners of the earth. Why do you suppose they named those four states four corners? Because they make a perfect square. Well, then why did they shape them in perfect shapes? Think, think, please. Mm. The amount of deception it would take for this to be true. But it's such a little thing if nobody's looking for it. How many people who visit this area break down these words? I'm starting to think that some of the things they tell us our language are just babble and hogwash. You think the chicken in Game of Thrones is speaking a real language, and she said she tried to study the language they made up, but it was too hard for her. Again, though, I tell you, I think that is something else entirely. So when thinking of prophecy, we have to think, where are the areas that people have been told they can't go in the United States? And are any of them in one spot? That is where the original bit of Israel is. But again, it might be our whole nation, because the Bible also says that Israel is protected until the end, and God takes his covering away from Israel. America is the one nation through my whole lifetime that's never been attacked on its landmass. We've never, I mean, allegedly we have, and I'm not going to get into that right now. We got a lot of psyops running against us. Why would military be against its own citizens? Well, if we're not its own citizens, if we are considered quote unquote Palestinians, because goyim, if you know what that word means, that's what I've been treated like since they probably found out who or what I was. Something happened somewhere, somebody discovered something, and everything changed for me. But again, it's kind of been like this my whole life. It wasn't always like this with these people, but okay. So if America is Israel, we would have to look at all the spots. All right, so you follow me here. Why does our Grand Canyon have these different, and why? Okay, so it's like Sanskrit too. Taha means they all or all. And there's more etymology. Now, here's the other problem is that I started looking at other areas around the Grand Canyon, and some of them are Hindu names. So I had to go back and say, in the beginning, what were all these names? What were these called? This will be an ongoing study for me. I will not stop doing this. I will not stop trying to prove that America is Israel. And the only way I might be able to prove this is if I actually leave here at this point. because for whatever reason, the butterfly effect is real. And when I talk about something, it gets out there. And that's what people have to understand about the ether. When one person has a thought, it's already out there. It's already, what's the word I'm looking for? When you can catch something, right? It's already contagious once it becomes a thought. The word, spoken word, makes it that much more real, right? Because our words have power. So I know that this is going to get out to more people. I just know it. And I pray that it does. Because if there's anything you should be gathering for right now, it shouldn't be protests, because those are all put ons. Yeah, none of them are real. I saw a protest down here at our local, our small local city a couple of years ago when all this began. Guys, look at all your history books with the protests and Nelson Mandela. Do you really think that they posed long enough for somebody to take a picture? Think, guys. And oh, the cameraman just happens to be the one who never gets hurt, who's never involved. You've got to think. You've got to use your brain. Nothing they show, everything on that screen, unless it's little people like us talking to each other, everything is fake. It's all a put on. Now they've told us that America is this unbeatable nation. And they know that pride comes after, or fall comes after pride. They want us as guilty as them. They want you stuck in idolatry, so they give you Trump. Follow me for a second, okay? They want you stuck in idolatry, so they give you him. They want you to be prideful because they know a fall comes next, so they give you, oh, we've got the best military. There's none like it. We are the best, the best, the best everywhere. There's no one else. And then throw in a little Jersey Shore, and you got a whole society of hypersexualized people walking around who don't care where they are, where they're from, or who they are. God is going to be the hardest on Israel and on his church. The best thing you can do at this point is hit your knees. Start exploring. Start looking at the Grand Canyon and asking yourself, why do so many of these pictures look fake? Why are they showing us fake pictures of the Grand Canyon? If you've never been there, go through. I mean, I'm serious. Okay, so this is this area. This is where this is allegedly at. Okay, but we're going to look at Grand Canyon real quick again before we segue out of here. Guess what else is close, guys? Guess what else is close? The Hoover Dam, right? The Hoover Dam. And the Hoover Dam is where the fallen angels are kept. The ones who at the end days will be set free. Has anyone been to the Hoover Dam recently? Are the angels still there? Are they still there? Has anyone went to see if they're gone yet? Because the two that they show everybody, from what I understand, they're under all this, like that aren't visible. They don't look like statues. They look like that one from the Russian picture that everybody's sharing. So this isn't, in my opinion, this is not the Colorado River, but it would be the Euphrates. This is in 2017. This is in 2022. In the end days, the Euphrates River shall dry up and shall give up the four angels. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. It looks pretty dry, doesn't it? So yes, I'm saying that America is in a world of trouble coming because we are Israel and we've been a bad, bad child. And they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know about that. They'd rather you completely were in the dark. They want everything to be a surprise because that's what's the most fun for them. And they're trying to do damage control right now. And they don't want your soul to go to the Lord. They want your soul. Not only your soul, though, guys, they want your body too. Remember how The Walking Dead, they said everybody's got it already? That and tainted meat was what that series had true in it, and we were supposed to pay attention. The phrase tainted meat, look at that. Look at that difference in 14 years. See it? The Colorado is the Euphrates. The Mississippi is probably the Nile. Yeah. Wow, look at all those boats. So ask yourself, folks, do you know who you are? Do you know where you are? Do you know when you are? Because I would argue that you do not. I'll show you this one more time. One more time. See this? Not natural. Nothing in nature is that straight. But sacred geometry. You ever know how most of sacred geometry is lines that are on an angle of some kind or curves completely? You don't find this in nature. This is not natural, especially with a camera. Somebody's going to mess up somewhere. This is not natural. But Jen, what would they actually be hiding here? The skyline. I couldn't figure it out at first either. I'm like, what part of this is fake? I know some of it, something here is fake because they all look the same. They all look like that. See that line? That's not how nature works, especially an area like this that we're told formed by erosion. That's not, no, that shouldn't be that straight. It's pretty much impossible. See this? I don't know if everyone is an actor that we see go there. I'm not sure. There are a lot of parts of it that we're not regular people aren't allowed at, probably for these reasons. The picture of my sister-in-law going, that was probably when she was initiated. They're only going to keep you if you keep the secret. You're only allowed in the club if you're a liar. And that's when, I'm supposed to be charitable. I get that. I have no tolerance for deception anymore. None. Because the people doing the lying are just dumb. Plausible deniability. Dude, I don't care no more. Your lies are obvious and blatant and harmful. See? Something about that is not right. That's not normal. And I see there's some curves there. That's not something here is just not right. And again, if you're someone who's familiar with photo editing and stuff like I am, and I'm just a layman, I know that that is wrong, that there's something going on there. I just don't know what because I've not been there myself. Grand Canyon. Gee, wouldn't that look like a place where, oh, I don't know, some scrolls might be hidden and found one day? Like the Nagamadis? Uh, okay, so let's segue back to here because I want this guy to bottom line me because he's saying that that the tribulation could be 40 years. So let's real quick, I'm going to run through this. And if I have to go back to it like tomorrow or whatever, I will. But it says, let's re-examine the story of the fig tree. There we read, and the stars of heaven fell into earth, even as a that at the time foreseen by this parable, a powerful wind, that is demonic forces, will press mightily, but stars of heaven, that is angels of God, will come to her rescue. Although the language identifies the angels is figurative, we are specifically told a few verses later that John saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. In other words, four angels will take up positions to hold back destructive forces. The account also assures us that the only harm done to the fig tree will be the loss of some untimely figs. The word translated by untimely figs refers to figs that fall on the ground before they are ripe. That's kind of like what Cain gave to God. It wasn't the fact that he gave him just fruits and vegetables, it was the fact that they were on the ground. The implication is that only recently has the fig tree produced the new tree growth visible in springtime. New leaves have appeared, and baby figs, or takash, have emerged under the leaves. Here is the leafing out of the tree that Jesus foresaw in his second parable of the fig tree. But as we learn from this first parable, it is not the leaves but the figs that represent believers in Christ. The meaning of the third parable is that just before the winds blow off baby figs during the early portion of the tribulation, the nation of Israel will pass from barren wintertime to fruitful springtime in the sense of undergoing spiritual revival. Hold, please. That's exactly what I was talking about when I said my blood is calling to me, and it might be calling to some of you targeted individuals or people who are quote unquote waking up in these last few years. We are told that the tribes will be called home. All of us who have been scattered to the winds shall be called home. It makes me, I got goosebumps. I don't know what else to say about it. Like this is so exciting for me. Here's the leafing out of the trees. Okay, so the meaning of the third parable is that just before winds blow off baby figs during the early portion of the tribulation, the nation of Israel will pass from barren wintertime to fruitful springtime in the sense of undergoing spiritual revival. Again, they're not going to show you this on TV. TV is like football teams. You've got this Zionism going on. Why? Because Israel isn't even a real nation insofar as how do I say this? We can't go by what we're seeing on TV as any type of indication of a timeline. We have to go by the nature around us. We can't go by the screen. Everybody's going by the screen, and this some dude named Netanyahu who hasn't aged in my whole life. He's been the leader of Israel. Him and Putin have not aged one iota. Something is wrong. Like we've been so lied to about so much. And this is why I think death at this point is just an illusion, because we're told that Christ shall throw Satan into the lake of fire, and men shall seek death and be unable to find it. I started the talk about, who do you think started that talk about the cemeteries? I told you that since day one on Berean Gen. Something's going on. They're not making no new ones. You don't see any funerals anymore. And I don't want to hear the excuses. It's not my fault if you believe everything that your television tells you. It's a screen and you're letting it run your life. They're not even real people that you deal with on a daily basis. And I'm talking to myself here too. I understand more than most. For example, my spouse, every time I walk into his room, even for a short discussion, he's watching the videos on YouTube about women being arrested every single time. If that is all you're feeding your brain, but I also know it's a hidden intimidation. It's to say, here, if you get out of line, if you try to leave, this is what'll happen. You should be afraid of police. Be afraid. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Stay in line. If you can't see the way things in your life are being subtly used to manipulate you, that's not my fault. God is calling me home, and He's been waking me up these some years, and I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to be obedient. I'm gonna plug my laptop in because it's running off battery, but this video is almost done, I hope. Because I want to get to the part where he gives us the goods, and then we can pause it for a minute till tomorrow or later, whenever. Okay, so, and white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest for a little season. They should rest for a little season. I didn't know it was used there too. Because how much is Satan given? Everyone says S for, like, I guess Satan in short. They think it looks good in a title, but the Bible calls it the little season of Satan, right? Little season. And I imagine that if a season is about 6 to 8 weeks, that a little season is just that, a little season, but we have to go biblically what that means. But I find it ironic. They're told to rest for a little season, probably while Satan is loose, until their fellow servants and also their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. The 4 angels who will hold the winds in check, but also who will release them at a later time to bring destruction upon the earth, are likely the same ones who came to rescue of the fig tree. Another angel commands these 4 to keep up their protection of the fig tree and all other trees until the servants of God have been sealed in their foreheads. I'll tell you right now that trees are no longer being protected. I love trees. I notice when they're being cut down. I was told about the ash trees at the beginning of all this. Ash represents Asherah, the feminine. They told you we are in this together, which actually meant we are in this to get her. They are after the female representation, spirit, all of it right now. So it's probably not a good time for me to travel alone, but I've never done anything that was good for me. The significance of trees in general is therefore parallel to that of a single fig tree. You also notice, like, I've never seen a beaver live and in action, but I've seen the damage they do to trees. And we have a couple here now. Some people would probably say they've been messed with by Bigfoot, but really high up on the trees where the bark has been like torn off. I always, that's how this has gone for me because I am so isolated and secluded. God brings things to me. And when I see those things happening, I know where we're at in scripture. Usually, basically, not always. Another angel commands these four to keep up their protection of the fig tree. The concept of trees is employed here in a symbolic sense with reference to all the nations that will produce spiritual fruit. AKA, trees can also mean people. You see this in the Lord of the Rings as well, that they used to be people. So, trees and people, stars and angels. Those things are used interchangeably, and sometimes stones. People are referred to as stones. Why, I don't know. We just are. After an angelic guard is posted about the fig tree as well as other trees, 144,000 in the 12 tribes of Israel are defined as servants of God and set aside to receive God's seal. Um, so they're saying that each tribe has 12,000, which most people agree on. Reuben, Naphtali, Levi, Joseph, Benjamin. So, who are the missing tribes? It is evident that the record of the period following the opening of the sixth seal, speaking of Israel's renewal as a source of spiritual fruit, yet the revival will not be confined to the nation of Israel. An angelic guard is set on all trees. We infer a new season of spiritual fruit will come to all the nations of the world, just as Jesus predicted in his Olivet discourse when he was foreseeing events during the tribulation. Right, because we're told there will be saints made during this time, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall come the end. Students of prophecy generally agree that the rapture of the church will occur before all or nearly all other future events predicted in the book of Revelation. In other words, it will happen somewhat before the spiritual revival, the demonic persecution. I love that he uses that word there too, demonic persecution, because that's what it is. That's what so many of us are like, man, our family is behaving like demons. I mean, guys, there's stuff that I don't tell you, but there's stuff that I've seen in like the Exorcist movie that I'm seeing in my household now. Like things are not okay, regardless of what face I put on. Go by what's happening in the people around you and in what the animals in nature is showing you. You can, they don't want you trusting your own eyes, but you're going to have to really refine your own discernment. I don't care if you got to walk around your house blindfolded until you know where everything's at without being told. I've done that. I've spent days blindfolded or with my eyes closed, it builds discernment. I know it sounds weird. It follows from our analysis that the leafing out of the tree will not, as many students of prophecy in the past have assumed, served as a sign that the tribulation is approaching. Rather, it will come after history has entered the tribulation. We argued earlier that when Christ spoke of a future rebudding of the fig tree, he was referring to spiritual revival in the nation of Israel. We have now shown that the tribulation will already be underway when this event comes to pass, which I agree with. Because again, in Matthew, it says after the tribulation. Since Christ said that after this tree put forth leaves, as much as a generation will elapse before Christ's return in glory, our interpretation of the imagery implies that the tribulation will last about 40 years. We will now proceed to present 5 arguments in support of our position that the tribulation will be a considerably longer period than most students of prophecy have imagined. Ooh, let's see how much time and see if we should continue this tomorrow because I want other people to tune in. Looks like I can do a little more. Let's keep going for a little bit because we're just getting to the good bits. Okay. Fallacies limiting the tribulation to 7 years. Events described in Revelation 6 through 10. In Revelation 11, we read that the 2 messengers of God will appear on earth and carry out their ministry for 1,260 days. Virtually all students of prophecy who believe that the Revelation speaks of actual future events agree that the remainder of Revelation treats events following the messenger's appearance. That's key because a lot of people like that's lost on. At the end of their period ministry, the Antichrist will return from the dead. kill them, and sit as ruler for another 1260 days. These two periods add up to the 70th week of Daniel. But the same students of prophecy generally agree that the revelation begins its survey of the tribulation at the beginning of chapter 6. Thus, when will the events foreseen in 6 through 10 happen? There are three possibilities. One, the first is that the events before chapter 11 coincide with events afterward. Yet this is not a tenable solution. Between onset and conclusion of the tribulation will come 3 cycles of 7 judgments upon the earth. The first cycle is known as the 7 seals, the second as the 7 trumpets, and the last is the 7 vials. That's wrath with the vials. That's when I hope to be gone. That's when I believe, like, the actual wrath of God is saved for workers of iniquity. That's when I believe God gets us out of the way. But I do also, part of me thinks that people who believe in I think everybody is right. I think it's possible there were 3 or 4 raptures because he sends out 4 angels to the 4 corners. But if there's a pre-tribulation rapture, the first will be last and the last shall be first. That means the last born shall be first taken up, the youngest, the babes, the innocents. So if there is 3 or 4 raptures, they will be taken first, and I believe they've already been taken, though not in a way that is visible to most people. I believe that innocence and the child is gone from the earth. I know that you've probably seen babies. I've even held one. Very, very heavy baby for its appearance. But moving on, just because you see something doesn't mean it's true. I tell you to trust your eyes, but that's if your spiritual discernment is where it needs to be. Okay, so we got that, right? 3 series of 7, which would be 21 years. The names speak of heavenly events. Before each judgment in the first cycle, Christ removes a seal from a great scroll in heaven. In the second cycle, an angel blows a trumpet to announce each new judgment. Each judgment in the third cycle comes after an angel pours upon the earth the contents of a great vial or bowl. The 3 cycles are obviously consecutive. We know that the seals precede the trumpets because at the time of the 6th seal, a command issues from heaven's throne that no harm should come to the earth, the sea, and the trees until the 144,000 receive seals upon their foreheads. Whereas at the time of the first trumpet, hail and fire fall upon the earth, and a third part of the trees are burned up. And at the time of the second trumpet, a third part of the sea becomes blood. Hold right there. If they are giving you news right now that is true, it's because they have to, and it's obvious. For example, wildfires. They have to tell us people in Ohio something because our air quality has been crap, right? That is the only time you will get the truth about the news. So, for example, I'm in Ohio. When they tell me something is happening in LA, I don't believe them. As a rule, I don't believe them because it's not my area and I can't see the effects of it. I don't know if any of those fires happened. And no offense, but I don't know you. I don't know if you're a bot. I don't know if you're lying to me or gaslighting me. And honestly, in these days, that's the way we should be. Don't believe me. Take everything to prayer, take it to the one who made you, and ask very specifically, is the Grand Canyon a part of Israel? Is Israel within America? Is America Israel? Are we in the time of great tribulation? Ask the Lord. Okay? Okay, and a third becomes blood. Now, the trees being burned up. Again, they will only tell you something if they have to. We are seeing evidence of fire on the East Coast, so they have to tell us it is wildfires from somewhere. They told us it was gender reveal starting wildfires. They told us it was arsonists. But what if it's Uriel? You think they're going to tell you, well, it's these things falling down from the heavens? You think they're going to tell you it's lava bubbling up from the caldera? No, they're not going to tell you that. You got to figure this stuff out for yourself. This is why we don't actually know where we are when we are. And this is why I don't trust the mainstream media, because they want you to believe we're in the end days. We got a lot of celebrities going to church, which should make you very suspicious. It's one of the reasons I can't fully commit to the Catholic Church. I'm not going to do that, especially if Native Americans were one of the original tribes, then they were probably doing things right by communing with the spirit, by being good to nature. by giving and receiving and receiving and giving back to the earth. People don't want to hear that today. Oh, you're not civilized. Let's civilize everybody and cut their hair and put clothes on them and make them live in a box. Doesn't sound so and make sure they're all in debt and work their lives away. It doesn't sound so great when you compare it like that, does it? That civilized people need to punch a clock and be away from their family. Native Americans didn't do that. Farmers didn't do that. Your work was done on your own land. Even slavery back in the day, guys, they worked their own land. It was indentured servitude. They ended up owning the land that they worked. Why do you think so many people of color today are in the positions they're in? Because the land was, they worked the land. They own it. So again, a lot of the stuff you're being shown on television is not the truth. And no, I don't care who gets mad. Time, a very hard time, many of us. And most will do whatever they're told because they have children that they're afraid for. And I can't, some of them have hurt me. Probably because they were asked to and they have children that are easily used against them. Anything you have will and can be used against you. That's the truth. Okay, so the second is that the events foreseen in chapters 6 through 10 take hardly any time, but squeezing these events together on the time scale is not a fair treatment of the text. And we know this. We know that just because you read something one after another doesn't mean it happens that close together, and vice versa. Consider what will happen at the very beginning of the period is not one war, but a series of wars with calamitous effects upon the environment, food supplies, and public health. Sound familiar? Then, after a terrible plague attributed to falling stars from the sky, comes a pause lasting through the period of the seventh seal. Hold, please. We did have an alleged terrible plague that came after the woman in the sky, and we did have falling stars at that point. Let's continue. Judgment later resumes with another wave of Holocaust, culminating in an invasion by demonic creatures that will destroy a third of the world's population. Wonder how? I know how. The only reasonable solution is that the tribulation will be considerably longer than 7 years. I've thought the same for a while now. You've heard me mention it. The Antichrist term is world ruler. In my commentary on Daniel, I demonstrate that the Antichrist will control world government for a period that prophecy measures as a week and a half. By the reckoning employed in Daniel's 70 weeks, a week and a half is about 10 years. The time when the Antichrist exercises power will include an earlier reign lasting 7 years and a later reign lasting 3.5 years. The earlier will terminate at his assassination. The later, coming at the very end of tribulation, will terminate at Christ's return in glory. If we spend 10 years on the throne, the tribulation must be more than 7 years long. If he will spend. I don't know how he sorted that part out. As far as the assassination attempt and that goes, his timing, though, reasons with the rest of it. Again, we don't have to agree with all of it. We're just seeing what information is out here. In his promise that he would take Philadelphia at the rapture, Jesus said, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Why did he measure the tribulation as only 1 hour? A reader's natural assumption would be that hour should be taken figuratively as a term signifying a fairly short time in relation to the overall span of history. But this interpretation evaporates under the light of another text in Revelation. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Here it is unreasonable to imagine that hour is merely a figure of speech. To signify a short time, it would be enough to say an hour. There would be no need to specify half an hour, and it would be ridiculous to say about half an hour. About the space of half an hour is a fair rendering of the Greek text. Another option would be to understand the expression as a use of familiar units to specify an actual amount of time. But why would there be any need to tell us that for roughly a literal half hour, heaven was silent? No, the book of Revelation does not step aside from its march of profound truth to say things of trivial importance. Also, why would heaven use the same clock that earthlings use? What does hour signify? An hour is 1/24th of a day, and scripture teaches an equivalence between one day and 1,000 years. Oy vey, it does. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. In our reckoning of time, a common measure is the week. Where does this measure come from? The week was instituted by God to commemorate the 7 days of creation. It has no basis in astronomical rhythms, that it is nevertheless recognized and employed throughout the world. Didn't I say that earlier? That if God shortens the time, it has to be the time of something that we all agree upon? Didn't I say that? And I've said that for a long time too. I'm so glad to find that, like, I'm not alone in some of these things, that it is nevertheless recognized and employed throughout the world, even where the Genesis account of creation is hardly known, is a striking testimony to divine sovereignty. Yet the week not only mirrors the beginning of history, it also mirrors history itself, with each day corresponding to 1,000 years. Right, like right now, we would be in day 7. Well, actually, we would be in day 6 or 8, not really 7 because we're not having rest. So far, the earth has lasted about 6,000 years, and we are near the dawning of the last thousand, known as the millennium, just as every ordinary week. And that's the thing, ends on a Sabbath. So the one day lasting as 1,000 years of his reign, right? We would be in day 6 right now. So he would be due to come. So history will end on the day of the Lord. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. The day of the Lord will begin when the thief comes to steal away his people from this world. In other words, at the rapture, and will end when the present universe is dissolved and replaced by new heavens and a new earth. In other words, at the end of the millennium. It was therefore only natural in the Lord's reckoning of time to use a similar unit when measuring the length of the tribulation. If a day is 1,000 years, and an hour is 41 and two-third years, if this is the length of the tribulation, and if the rebudding of the fig tree will take place during the opening years, it was therefore completely appropriate for Jesus to say that a generation would not pass before the coming period of horrific judgment reached its climax at the glorious return of Christ. A transitional dispensation. The belief that the tribulation will last only 7 years rests on assumption which might be labeled ultra dispensational. The core assumption is that the rapture will bring an end to the church age. Not true. Then why would there be a millennium, right? Exactly. The common view is that the dispensation supplanting the church age after the tribulation begins will be a revival in some measure of the Mosaic. A natural outgrowth of this reasoning is to equate the tribulation with Daniel's 70th week. But I show at the length in my commentary on Daniel that the tribulation will be a transitional period between two dispensations, between the church age and the millennium. I'm not real big into the dispensation theology, but again, we're going to continue because it's okay to take in information that is different than yours. That is when you learn. For this period to last about 40 years would be consistent with divine procedure in the past. Israel's 40 years of wandering in the wilderness fell in the transitional period between the Abrahamic and Mosaic dispensations. Well, okay, he's got a little precedent there. The 40 years elapsing between Christ's resurrection and the destruction of the temple fell in the transitional period between the Mosaic dispensation and the church age. In what sense was the latter period transitional? What do you think would have been the eternal fate of a devout Jew who died after Christ's resurrection, but who never heard of Christ? I am sure that God counted his soul among Old Testament saints. I am sure also that after AD 70, there were no remaining non Christian Jews who could claim the same standing in God's sight. I would probably agree with that. Scriptural precedents of the tribulation. Throughout Scripture, the number often measures the duration of events that would be seen as foreshadowing the tribulation, because they bring divine judgment upon sinners in rebellion against God, or because they take God's people through a time of testing. Testing would be an even better translation of, looks like tiramisu, pyrosmu, the Greek word translated temptation, and the phrase our temptation.
One, the water level of the worldwide flood in Noah's days increased for 40 days, right? For all those inside the dark prison of the ark, their long seclusion in the midst of waters rising and rain descending surely tested their faith. Two, the nation of Israel wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. Three, not long after the nation began their wanderings in the wilderness, Moses spent 40 days in fellowship with God. Four, later, after he had spent another 40 days on the mountain receiving new tables, he returned to the people and found they now possessed an obedient spirit after another 40, right? Five, the spies searched the land of promise for 40 days. Six, under the leadership of Othniel, who conquered the king of Mesopotamia, the land of Israel had rest for 40 days. Seven, when Goliath challenged the army of Israel for 40 days. Eight, after Jezebel threatened Elijah, he fled ever deeper into the wilderness for 40 days. Nine, God instructed Ezekiel to lie on his right side for 40 days. 10, Jonah warned the people of Nineveh that the city would be destroyed after the passage of 40 days. 11, Jesus spent 40 days fasting in the wilderness. 12, the risen Jesus appeared to his followers on 7 occasions during the 40 days after his resurrection. Wow, guys, there's a lot of evidence for this. Question would be, when did it start? If that really is the truth, when did tribulation start then? And I'm going to throw something at the wall just to see if it sticks. My guess is 1983. And the only reason I say 1983 is because that is when a lot of that number has been thrown around a lot, and I couldn't figure out why or where it fit, but it would fit here. And it's a maybe. It's obviously a maybe. All right. The significance of heaven's half-hour silence. If our reasoning so far has been correct, which it is very logical, we come to an intriguing question. Why will the tribulation be interrupted by a silence in heaven lasting about 20 years? That actually makes sense, though. It gives people time to repent. It's for repentance. I don't know. Let's keep reading. That's my guess. The evident meaning is that judgment will be suspended during this period. After about 10 years of horrible disasters at the beginning of the tribulation, and before another 10 years, of even worse calamities, there will be a protracted lull in the storm of divine wrath. I kind of feel like that's where we are now. I've said I felt like we were on pause since like CV time. Like I feel like even our leaders, like they have no authority right now, it seems, to do much of anything. The book of Revelation gives some strong hints as to the reason. The silence occupies the whole period after the opening of the seventh seal and before the sounding of the first trumpet. Now we have people with videos going way back saying they've heard the trumpets. So again, take everything with a grain of salt and take it back to scripture and the Lord. But I like how this aligns with the hierarchy in my head. This doesn't bring any confusion. That's how I know something is of Satan. Every time one of these people comes to me saying it's the short season and giving me bunk evidence is confusion. The ME, when people talk about Mandela effect and they're not talking about it in the right manner, all that brings is confusion. God is not the author of confusion. He is going to bring clarity. That's the problem, though. People aren't liking the clarity. They would rather have their ears tickled. I would rather be in paradise at the end of this, so I don't mind not having my ears tickled. But maybe you want to trade paradise for a few empty promises. I'm not willing to take that risk, that gamble. Not much of a gambler. Okay, so, and before the sounding of the first trumpet, just before the silence begins, sometimes after the opening of the sixth seal, the angels of God place seals on the heads of the 144,000 men of Israel, men, women, and children. We are told nothing more about these chosen ones until we reach Revelation 14, speaking of events after the Antichrist to set up his final world empire in defiance of God. At that time, the 144,000 will stand with Christ on Mount Zion. Funny, we have a Mount Zion in America. We also have Garden of Gods in America. I could go on and on all day. One of these days, that's going to be the next video, is we're just going to pull up a map and go to all the places in America named after God and the angels. Maybe then people won't call me crazy anymore for using evidence that is right in front of me. That apparently people who've been to the Grand Canyon can't put two and two together. Why does it have Hebrew names? Why is Hopi so close to Sanskrit and Aramaic? And I'm sorry, I have no tolerance. It's not you guys, it's the deception. This is my life, but it's your life too. And if I'm the only one who's been lied to, like Truman, God forgive you for doing such a thing to a person. God forgive you for lying to all of us the way you have. This is shameful. I don't care what you tell me you've seen in a plane. I'm going to tell you you're on the wrong side. I don't care anymore because there are few of us. There's only 144,000 of us. How many of you all? That's why you were procreating like bunnies, right? That's why you had to have hybrids, right? God will grant the shattered nations of man a reprieve from judgment so long as these spokesmen for God are preaching the gospel and establishing churches. Their work will apparently continue with success for quite a few years until corruption and false teaching overtake revival and replace it with resistance and persecution. Then the ministry of the 144,000 will end. The ministry of the 144,000, y'all want to know what that is? You're looking at it. It's YouTube, biatches. This is where we testify, is the internet. This is where everyone has access to everyone. And God is using their tech against them because they stole it in the first place. I do not consent to being hidden anymore. People need to know these things. So these are our ministries. All of us little channels, pluck out 144,000 of us. I bet you will. Bet you can if you're only looking at people with under 50,000 subs. Oh. Their work will apparently continue and be replaced with resistance and persecution. Then the ministry of the 144,000 will end and God will order judgment to resume. When we see them later on Mount Zion, we are not told whether they have been lifted out of this world by rapture or by resurrection from a martyr's death. Yet we do learn that as they stand in close attendance upon Christ, they are singing with thunderous voices, surely a sound that would cause the Lord's enemies to tremble and flee. The scene may suggest that for 144,000 will be in the vanguard of heaven's army when Christ descends to vanquish his foes at the Battle of Armageddon. The evangelistic labors of the 144,000 are foreseen in Jesus' Olivet Discourse for a witness unto all nations. And again, I'm here to tell you that all these people going to all these foreign nations, oh, we've got to get the gospel out to these other people. They're lying to you. They're lying to you. They have other families, other wives. They're not who they pretend to be. Satan's false religions allow for multiple wives, even if the wives don't agree. Why do you think the false religions are so popular? There are no other places on the face of the earth who have not received the gospel yet. It doesn't exist anymore. Notice the placement of these words. They follow Jesus' brief survey of the beginning of sorrows. For nations shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Be aware, too, when it says kingdom against kingdom, it means God's against Satan's. Okay? Just be clear. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. In these two verses, he is evidently summarizing what will happen when the tribulation first descends upon this world. As I show in my commentary on Daniel, the disasters foreseen in these verses are parallel to events that Revelation sets during the periods triggered by opening the first four seals. I would be willing to bet now at this point, and I'm not a gambler, as I just said, I'd be willing to bet that the tribulation is 40 years long. I would. I'd put my money on it. Why? Because nobody's teaching it. Why? Because these Zionistic preachers and pastors and ministers who walk around with their one eye blackened are deceivers. And they're the ones telling you it's 7 years. Catholic priests say they really don't know. They're honest about it. They say, we don't know. We're supposed to walk this out the same way. And I know how you feel about the Catholic Church. And they want you to feel that way. Why do you think so many celebrities with less than stellar reputations are joining the Catholic Church? But remember, there's two of everything. And all of Satan's, everything that you see on television is the counterfeit. It's not the real thing. You see a Catholic church on the screen, probably not the real Catholic Church. You see a real Catholic on TV, probably not a real Catholic. You see a world leader on the TV, probably definitely not a real leader. And he's probably not even human. He's probably a robot or AI. So, he's saying that these verses are parallel. In the next portion of Matthew 24 and verses 9 through 13, Jesus speaks of terrible persecution falling upon his followers. Here we see a likely picture of conditions on the earth after opening the fifth seal. So, and when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they had. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood? We know how it goes. It is evident that there will be many deaths by martyrdom during this period. Next, in the Olivet Discourses, come verses 14, quoted above, predicting worldwide evangelism, which we are doing right now on the internet. Next, in Revelation 6 comes the opening of the sixth seal, when the 144,000 are set apart for divine service. It would seem like a lot of us have been set aside right now, and those of us are also being targeted, but we are also being protected from death, which is also ironic. Both the Olivet Discourse and the account in Revelation agree also that this evangelism will precede the last phase of the tribulation, when the Antichrist will seize the temple and demand worship of himself. Wow, that was a lot. And that's a lot to take in. I will obviously link that in the comments. Um, wow, I don't even know what to say about a lot of that. I have to say though that I've mentioned it in the last several videos and I've been looking for it. So true, lots of unsavory people suddenly turning to Catholicism. Yeah, I don't like that. It reeks of agenda to me. And I still, God told me at the beginning of this, don't be a quote unquote member of any church. They're using their registrars. Just like back in World War II, they probably used people's confessions against them. I told you the seal confessional was broken in my confession. What, that was 2 years ago now, when somebody, one of his cousins, came in my line at work and started talking about it. So we've got to be very careful that, again, somebody might say this is a genuine diamond, right? But make sure you're always checking today, because it's to find the genuine, to find the real, you got to work. And if somebody's trying to give you something in this day and age, you got to ask yourself, why are they giving it to me free? What is their agenda? And I hate to be that way. We're supposed to be charitable, but I'm saying on the inside, right? You have to understand discernment is just key at this point. I'm going to end this video. We will talk about this more, and we will absolutely talk about America being Israel in more future videos. If you missed that part of the video, go back. You need to hear that about the Grand Canyon, what we talked about. You guys have a blessed day. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for being here. Bye, guys. I love you.